Good afternoon. My name is James Geller. I so much wish that I could be with you, but unfortunately I'm coming to you through a recording. The title of my presentation is right here. You get what you pay for in paper reviewing, just like everywhere else. And I'm from the Yingwu College of Computing from the New Jersey Institute of Technology. So let's get started. First of all, let's review the basics here. So why do professors publish? Well, first of all, it helps them to get tenure. Tenure means lifetime employment with a salary, that is. Secondly, it helps them to get promotion, and that means higher prestige, and in many cases it means a higher salary. Furthermore, publications mean additional lines on the annual reports and on the resumes, and that often translates into additional merit pay and into salary raises. Yes, of course, they get a little bit of fame too, and they can feel good about themselves. They're contributing to humanity. But if you take a look here, 3 out of 5 reasons are really about salaries. So, I'm going to address 3 problems today. First problem is that some reviews are objectively not fair, and so bad to the point they are even contradicting each other. A second problem is that a good reviewer should look whether is this innovative work, is this interesting work, is this correct work, but many reviewers nowadays have this it's my way or the highway approach to reviewing. The third problem is that more and more papers get published, and reviewers don't notice problems with papers. As a result, many bad papers get published. Recently, there has been an increase in retractions in top journals that is very worrying. So let's talk about these problems. Here is a real example of a real review. I did copy and paste. I didn't doctor this or edit it. The only thing I changed is that I XY'd the name out of a person here. So what does this review say that I had in January 2016? It says that there was a lack of clear definition of the what might constitute errors, ambiguities, or misalignments. And note what the reviewer says. It should not be necessary for readers to go through XY's dissertation to guess at which types of criteria are used to define errors. This was reviewer 1. Well, reviewer 2 is much less verbose on the same paper. A huge concern is the clarify, yes, he wrote clarify, and the length of the paper. The paper is quite long. So where am I left with this? Adding pieces from XY's dissertation or cutting the paper because it's quite long? Now, if the editor would have done his job, he would have looked at the reviews and would have sent me some guidance. Well, I think you should cut the paper, or well, I think you should add details. But the editor just took the reviews, packed them up, and sent them to me. Problem 2, the my way or the highway reviewer. So here's again a copy and paste. Latin abbreviations are used freely in the middle of sentences, when ideally they ought to be reserved for use at the beginning of parenthetical expressions. Well, let me just throw in here that I took 4 years of Latin in high school. So I'm actually familiar with these things. And furthermore, there are websites that I look at before I write things. So for example, here is a website that specifically talks about IE and EG, and I did a copy and paste from that website. Finally, I tend to reserve IE and EG to introduce parenthetical statements. Okay, good, we agree here, but it's also perfectly fine to use IE and EG in other ways, and that's what I go by. It's perfectly fine. So why is the reviewer trying to impress his way of writing things on me? Problem 3. There are more and more papers. This is from Thomson Reuters website's database. It ends in 2008, but you see what is commonly called an exponential growth of publications. We're getting more and more papers, and as a corollary of that, we're getting more and more bad papers. So here is a paper called Why Has the Number of Scientific Retractions Increased? It's by Grantstein, Arturo Casadevall, and Frederick Fang, appeared in PLOS 1, July 8, 2013. And there is also a website called Retraction Watch. And I'm going to show you some information about the top 10 most highly cited retracted papers of recent years. So I don't have space to show you the actual paper titles and authors, but papers in Science 2005 and 2001, in Lancet 1998 and 2003, in Plant Journal in 2003, in Blood in 2001, BMC Evolutionary Biology 2015, EMBO Journal 1998, Cancer Research 2005, and Cell 2015. Why did reviewers not notice these problems? Why were the papers published in the first place so that they had to be retracted? And please note what journals these are. Science or Cell are journals that can make a career. Just for fun, many of these papers, in fact, all of these papers were cited after the retraction. Here are the citation numbers. So the Science paper was cited 868 times after it was retracted. So I'm asking myself, did the reviewers of the citing papers at least notice that these papers were cited after retraction? I don't know, I'm not sure. So let's talk about reward structures one more time. So grants. The professor writes a proposal, gets a federal grant from the National Science Foundation, gets a grant from the National Institute of Health. Then the professor gets approximately 4 kinds of rewards. First of all, he gets money for a PhD student, he gets a summer salary for himself, he gets conference travel or equipment money, and sometimes both. And typically he gets some internal honor from the university, sometimes money, sometimes an award, maybe tenure, maybe promotion. I call this a 4 cheese reward situation. Now let's look at journal papers and conference papers. What does a professor get who has a journal paper accepted? Well, one more entry in her or his resume, maybe rewards from the university, maybe tenure and promotion, but typically a single paper doesn't do a lot. You need many papers and maybe a small step toward fame. I give you at best 2 cheeses for this. Now here's the reward situation for reviewing a journal paper. Well, it's pretty much nothing. At best, the professor gets early knowledge of other people's research. This is always touted as an advantage. But if you read the ethics rules of the journals, then you know that you can pretty much not do anything with that early knowledge that you've gotten. And so you get a line in the resume, and the few tenure committees that I know, they ignore this line. So a rational professor, he has a grant deadline, he has a conference paper deadline, he has great results for journal paper, and he has a paper review deadline. And you know how these things happen, all these deadlines are on the same day. So let's remember again, this is a rational professor. How will he schedule his time? Any guesses? Well, I'm gonna tell you how. The reviewing gets the least amount of time, and with less time, the quality of reviews just simply suffers. So, we have met the enemy, and he is us. So now, what are we going to do? What is the solution? So part 1 of my solution is very simple. Pay reviewers. This will make them more responsible. Pay the journal editors also, because many of the journal editors are exactly professors. They are very busy, even busier than the authors, so pay them something. Now, there needs to be a change in the academic culture, because I'm not claiming that this is an entirely new idea. It has been tried, for example, at Collabora, but we don't need a few examples, we need all journals to do this, so all major journals. Now, I was interested in what Collabora is doing, and here's the flow diagram of how you end up getting paid by Collabora. And why does this diagram remind me a little bit of a maze over here? Well, here's the place where you're getting paid. We will highlight this in a moment. And furthermore, Collabora is limited to several branches of psychology. So let's zoom in on this here. So this is where you're getting paid, and you see that most of the money doesn't follow in this path to begin with, and then there are two other paths where the money can get lost for the reviewer. So you're gonna ask me, why should we pay for something that was always free? Why now? Well, when I was in college, science was still a gentleman's club. Even in graduate school, it was somewhat of a gentleman's club. But nowadays, authors and professors are evaluated. I almost want to call it cruelly evaluated, with key performance indicators, with citation indices, with H-index, with Google I-10 index. So our friends in management are always telling us, well, if you can measure it, you can manage it. Well, fine, great. But if you measure all these things, then you have to also measure in the correct way with the same coin the reviews. So every desirable behavior needs to be rewarded. You cannot keep the reviewing of journal papers as part of a gentleman's club while everything else is, I repeat, cruelly evaluated with numbers. Now, there are precedents for people paying for things that used to be free. So when I was in graduate school, this is not me, but when I was in graduate school, this is sort of how we watched television in the dorm. Television was free to air, yes, but nowadays, how many people use this? People today pay for television either to a cable TV provider or to a satellite dish provider, and they don't rely on the free service anymore, or they watch it on the internet and pay even there. Car radio is still free, and yet every month in my mail I get a letter from a certain satellite radio corporation that invites me to pay for the service. In short, people are willing to pay for better quality. So now I know Malcolm Gladwell divides audiences into followers and not so followers, but simply high-quality journals will have to differentiate themselves. One way to start doing this is by paying reviewers. And once enough good journals pay reviewers, we're going to reach a tipping point. Then the choice will be simply pay or go out of business, because all good reviewers will only work for pay. What's the solution? Part 2. So sometimes you feel outright helpless when you look at reviews. Why am I not allowed to submit expert testimony to the editor that actually shows that what the reviewer said doesn't make sense? And as an author, I need to be assured that the journal editor is actually going to keep this a secret. I think there are many scenarios where the journal editor will just take the refutation, forward them to the reviewers, and say, what do you think about this? Well, I don't want that. So journals should not use and certainly not pay reviewers that have been refuted many times. That's one thing. The other thing is that universities should really give professors credit for doing reviews in their tenure evaluations. So some formula like, if you do a review for a paid, I repeat, paid journal, paid review I mean, then this should count as one journal publication. Now we can argue about the number 6, but that's the basic principle, that reviews should be counted just as publications as long as these are reviews for journals that pay for reviews. Okay, so conclusions. Well, researchers just simply don't have time to do reviews. The quality of publications is suffering. There are more and more retractions as a result, even in top-tier journals. My solution is create a culture where every journal pays every reviewer. Furthermore, authors should be allowed to submit expert testimony to editors. They should be sure that refutations are not forwarded to reviewers. Journals should stop using and paying bad reviewers, and really universities should consider journal paper reviews as serious tenure items. Now, I know that I'm not with you and you can't ask me any questions. This is me. You can ask me questions, of course, by email. But I have decided to ask myself a question. So here it is. Aren't people going to game the system? And my answer is yes. They are. So what? There does not exist in humanity any perfect system. We need to replace the current system, which is clearly not good, with a better system. Now, just as a comparison, when the World Wide Web came up, many people rejected the idea. And one of the reasons was, well, there are going to be dead links. So you and I know there are dead links. So what? The World Wide Web has revolutionized life. And we need to make similar revolutionary steps to actually improve our publishing infrastructure. Thank you very much for your attention, and please do send me email what you think about this. Thank you.